Well, hi everyone. It's great to see you all this afternoon or whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Welcome to our virtual meeting, which we have bi-monthly. And a big hello to first-time participants, as well as to our returning members. So this is what we're going to cover today, just to orient you. We have a new ACRN leader or ACRN leader that we will introduce you to. And then we're going to spend some time talking about the class projects that we worked on this semester. Next up will be some website changes that are in the works and on which we've spent a fair amount of time. Then we'll talk about two graduate student tools designed specifically for them, the World of Work blog, and then finally just some updates. So let's go to the first part then of our agenda, which is we have a new ACRN leader, and her name is Jennifer Studebaker. You can read all about Jennifer right here on the slide, so I won't repeat that. But Jennifer, why don't you talk to us about why you got involved in ACRN in the first place?
Sure. Yeah, so probably nobody that's been involved in ACRN is super surprised that I've decided to deepen my support of this group. So I graduated with my master's degree from Purdue back in 2012, and I ended up going and kind of working actually at an association at the Society of Musicology, but kind of disconnected from the anthropology field. And when I did finally start re-attending conferences back, I think in 2016, I came with kind of like the mission in my mind of like telling other graduate students and early faculty that like there are other jobs out there. So when Elizabeth and Ryle went and formed at the time the commission, now the network, I was like, this is exactly what I want to do and see happen. So full disclosure, Ryle was on my committee at Purdue and he had introduced me to Elizabeth. So I was familiar with both of them. So this is something that I'm personally really passionate about. And actually, even one of the things I used to joke about after I graduated was, I really wish I could go help advise universities to make their, programs, more supportive of everyone involved. And here we are, helping out with our department advisory initiative. So I'm just really excited to be more involved. Since I first joined the network, I started as one of the working group leads, stepping in after Robert, helping out with a rapid assessment around practitioners' experiences. And I've also been pretty involved in our communications and media strategy.
Great. Well, thank you so much and welcome aboard. I know that we're going to do some great things together because you're part of this team in a very
Thanks.
important way. So next up, we're going to be talking about two client-based class projects that we were involved with this past semester. The first one will be discussed by Susan Squires at University of North Texas. And then the second one will be described by Lauren Lowe and Ellen Rubenstein at North Dakota State. So let's go ahead and start. Susan, take it away.
Right, and I would like to jointly present this with Sarah, who I see is here today.
Oh, wonderful.
Sure.
And there was a member of this survey team. And I think I didn't see anybody else here, but so Sarah, I'll lead off, and then if you want to add things, please do.
Sure. Happy to.
All right, so there were eight students who in my graduate students in the evaluation course that I taught last semester, and we took on this project, and it's really great to be able to do this kind of work for ACRN. I think we really like it, All of us really like it. We learn a lot and we're really contributing to something.
Mhm.
Next slide.
Yep.
So the survey was really about learning more about the membership, and then getting some of the membership's opinions about resources, the usefulness of resources, and what ACRN should be doing next as far as initiatives. So to begin, I'm going to go quickly through this. It's a 30-page report, but I've tried to summarize it in 3 slides. To begin with, the membership is worldwide, as you can see from this map. But the majority of people are in North America. Almost 50% identify as social cultural anthropologists. And what was surprising, out of the 218 people that responded, only 14% were students. The majority were instructors in anthropology departments, which if that, so, and 60% also have PhDs, and you can see there seems to be an overlap here. 67% of the others. Oh, all right. So we asked, I think this has always been a burning question. What should we call ourselves? Are we practicing anthropologists or applied anthropologists? And basically almost 3/4 of folks answered yes to both. As you can see, 67% said practicing, 76% applied. A lot of overlap, right? A lot of overlap. So both terms seem to be useful for the majority of the membership. You want to go to the next slide?
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. So we asked in the survey, and I'm sure some of you took this survey and are very familiar with it, overall use of resources. And we found that 60% of the folks that had been to the site did look at least try one resource of service. And the top 3 were newsletters, the presentation workshops, and world of blogs. So I would say the majority of people said these were the things that they found the most useful. We also asked about instructor tools and student tools, and we discovered that only 20% of the respondents had tried instructor tools. So that's a fairly low bar here. Most of them were instructors, as you would expect, although there were a few students that did look at these tools as well. The top tools were applying anthropology in the workplace and the elevator pitch. Not surprising. 30% of the respondents, and as I said, remember 30% of the respondents used the student tools. Remember, only 14% of the people responding were students. This means that many others had gone to look at student tools that are not just students. And the tools that were found to be most effective here, or most highly rated, were what can you do with an anthropology degree, and job titles that should be explored. All right. So as I said, a small percentage of both instructors and students looked at everything. Next slide. We then asked about ACRN priorities, and I think this is going to be important for moving forward and what should be the important initiatives for ACRN in the coming few years. Under organizational priorities, the top 2 were publishing a membership directory of people who are interested in knowing who else is in the group, and a research agenda for practice, which I'm not totally surprised. It's an area that practicing applied anthropologists are always concerned about, making sure that their work gets published. So I think that's part of the research agenda. Educational priorities, developing a professionalization kit, and creating workshops, modules for courses. And you can see that might be something of particular interest, as so many of the people who were responded were instructors themselves. Resource development priorities, workshops at SFAA and the AAAs. Again, a large majority of people who were interested in this were instructors. And then develop publication and research frameworks. And you can see that there's a parallel between research agenda and developing publications. So you can see there's some overlap here that we suspect, but hadn't done some crosstabs to find out. And that's something that can be done in the future. And finally, outreach and marketing. creating marketing messages about the importance of anthropology. And I think Elizabeth may talk about that later, but that is an initiative I think she's already thinking about. And departmental advisory initiatives, which is something that Jennifer just talked about. And those were the two top outreach priorities. And with that, that's my very brief survey.
No, that was great.
summary.
Sarah, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I participated as a student in the course, but I also my career is in the field of evaluation. And I think it highlights the importance for students who are undergraduate or rising graduate students who are interested in that type of occupation, the importance of getting real world practice in data collection and analysis, working with real data, having to, puzzle through sampling and response rates and kind of imperfect data the way it comes back to you. I think that's a really valuable experience if students are inclined to get into this line of work. So I thought it's the type of thing that can help rising students become well positioned if they want that type of career.
Do you have anything to? Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
No,
I
I
was
was just gonna, I was
Yeah.
just gonna say that UNT has really been behind the whole notion of client-based class projects. I mean, it's built into their curriculum. They do it extremely well. The range of clients varies tremendously. And it really is, as Sarah just said, an opportunity for everyone who's involved to learn something important. The students, of course, learn about project management and having to deal with a client, and the client learns about how the students were able to put together the material that they did. So it's a win-win all around from my perspective.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for Susan or Sarah? You can also put your questions in the chat and we can pass those on later to them and try to get you an answer. But is there anyone that has a burning question about the survey?
I don't feel qualified to ask the question. This is Bob Wolf.
Hi,
Since
Bob.
I'm very new to the organization, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Did you define practice and applied in the survey, or was that just left to the people filling it out?
We left it to the people filling it out rather than try to put brackets around it and maybe make a mistake.
Right, and I understand it's both of those terms are very vague. Although I have to say, as the founder of Practicing Anthropology, the founding editor of Practicing Anthropology, I think that's when the term practice was introduced into anthropology. That was 1979.
Probably.
And I had a very specific definition of practice. We wanted to differentiate practicing anthropology from journals like Human Organization. We saw applied anthropology as the world of academia. And we didn't want to replicate that in practicing anthropology. We wanted people in practicing anthropology to be practitioners, which we defined as anthropologists working full-time in government and industry, not part-time during the summer as an academic would do.
Right.
So we had a very specific definition of practice versus applied, but I understand that everyone doesn't agree with or even know about that distinction. So, but I bring it up here.
Yeah, I thank you for that, Bob. And that's how I would say many of us think about the distinctions. But I appreciate that history. Suzanne?
What do you mean by research agenda for practice?
Basically, what that means is that the focus is on people who are working in industry, in nonprofits, in government, and the research that they do which they then publish. That's simply what it means. I'll just give you a brief example. I was at a workshop that was held at AAA in Toronto this past November. And I knew the presenter, and she was asking the group what publications, what literature they felt was important for their students to read. And not one person mentioned the works by practitioners. And I was appalled. And so the emphasis here is on people who are not in academia, but who continue to publish. Adam?
Hi. Yeah, and I noticed the same thing Bob did and a few other people did about applied versus practice. I do happen to know the history of the terminology, but before even Bob said, by the way, hi Bob, it's been a while.
Hey, Adam, it has been a while. Good to see you.
Before he even mentioned that, I was thinking that it wouldn't hurt to have some kind of at least simple definition. And if we are collecting data, if this is research, that overlap does kind of make it a bit fuzzier. And of course, this is not very high level research, but it's really, it would be really important to us. So without going down a rabbit hole on this, I also think it's a good idea because, yeah, so many people call themselves applied anthropologists and they never set foot outside the university. And then some of us have never set foot inside the university. And what do we call ourselves? So just to jump on that point, it's no big deal. I just wanted to kind of comment on Bob's comment because I haven't seen him in a while.
Thank you.
Let me just comment about that.
Oh, go ahead, Susan. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we all know that history, and I appreciate that, the distinction. However, we were just interested in knowing, well, how are people using these terms without even using the definitions? To find out just where are people, what are people, how are they presenting themselves, what terms are they using? So that's why the question was asked, and that's how we've got the data. I mean, we didn't want to steer people by giving them a bunch of definitions and then say, okay, now that you know all the definitions, let's, think about this. We want to know how people are presenting themselves.
Right.
So even though there is a definition out there that a lot of us know about, I don't know if beware is the right term, but be aware that the terms are used in a very fluid manner. And maybe there needs to be somebody jumping back in to make distinctions, but it's really interesting how I was surprised about how much overlap there was.
Right, and I think it might be worth doing a crosstabs on that just to see, but
Yes.
all right, we have time for one more question. Kate, go ahead.
Yeah, so I definitely, I raised my hand. I did put a question or a comment about crosstabs in the chat, but I definitely think that there's some value in getting people to define for them, like instead
Yes.
of giving the definition and asking them to place themselves according to those labels, asking them to define what terms do you use to describe yourself. Give us the full spectrum. Like I also say ethnographer, because ethnography is a big deal in business right now, and some of how we use the terminology may be based on positions that are open to us in fields, in organizations outside of academia. So some of the cross use might be because it makes us more nimble and more flexible on the job market, and that's helpful for us to tease out. And so maybe doing some follow-up research and getting a group of people to give their own definitions of what they mean by that. I do think most of us probably, whether we remember it or not, have heard those definitions going through graduate school. I used to teach those definitions, but honestly, I don't know like how people are using it in the wild is going to map to how it's how those terms are being used
Yeah.
within academic
Right.
settings. And so I think it'll be really interesting to do some textual analysis of the way we describe it for ourselves in those individual contexts, and then look at it at a broader level. So just food for thought, because I think those definitions may have changed in people's mind, and it may be changing because the market's changing. So
Yeah. Sorry to, we're gonna have to move on, but thank you for those comments. You know, it's clearly a question of identity. It's also a question of situation and context when you use which term. But I think that doing the crosstabs might be helpful, and Sarah had a comment to that effect in the chat, if you want to look at that. So next up, we have North Dakota State. And Lauren is going to present, and Ellen Rubenstein will probably say a few words as well. So this is an ambulatory care pharmacy study that we were basically guiding, or ACRN was basically guiding or coaching. So Lauren, go right ahead.
Okay, hi, I'm Lauren Lau, and I'm currently studying medical anthropology at NDSU, instructed by my professor, Dr. Ellen Rubenstein, who's also here today. But in this course, we were able to conduct a qualitative interview project surrounding the topic of understanding stress and success in ambulatory care pharmacy. So with the help of the members of the ACRN organization, we were able to do this. We were initially provided the research topic of studying burnout in ambulatory care pharmacy, but we collectively kind of determined that in order to avoid any leading questions or wording biases throughout the interviewing process, that we would refrain from using specific terminology that directly pertain to the word burnout. So this kind of helped in encouraging our participants to kind of formulate their own responses, more unique to their personal experience in their own workplace or position. So shown on this first slide here, we kind of divided the components of our research process into 3 broader phases, those being the interview phase, the analysis phase, and the conclusion phase. Within the interview phase, it consisted of all the students in our class conducted 20 to 30-minute interviews, with each of us being assigned 1 or 2 ambulatory care pharmacists who had previously agreed to volunteer their time with us. Prior to the actual interviews, we did come together as a class with a number of potential interviewing questions that kind of had to do with the topic. And after kind of constructing a rough draft of questions, we were able to meet with Dr. Elizabeth Bridey, where she took the liberty of helping us as a class kind of condense the longer list into a series of shorter and long answer questions that she kind of felt would best help us ensure that our interviewing questions would provide us with good answers, good information. So we also made sure to kind of standardize this list across all of our interviews so that we're all asking the same questions, and we can kind of compare the feedback more accurately then. So of the 21 pharmacists that we did interview collectively, we selected pharmacists that were employed at both public and private health systems, as well as pharmacists who had anywhere between 2 to 22 years in ambulatory care pharmacy. And these variables kind of helped us compare the results a little bit further, trying to decipher different patterns or trends and responses to our list of questions. Within the analysis phase, we individually kind of attempted to highlight certain keywords or codes and phrases that seemed more commonly prevalent amongst the board of responses. So we kind of continued our standardization process by coding our own transcribed interviews, focusing on these keywords and phrases, ones that specifically signified feelings of both challenges and successes within their line of work. So we used the process of cutting and sorting these codes, additionally including quotes from the actual interviews that corresponded best to the selected codes. And then our conclusion phase, kind of played the role of tying everything together. So we were able to combine all of our information and present our findings to our clients. We were able to conduct a mock presentation prior to the real one, accompanied by Dr. Elizabeth Bridey. She was kind of able to provide us with feedback on what we should keep or take out in preparation for our actual interview. So kind of deciphering more significant contributors to burnout throughout our data, we were able to construct a condensed list of codes for both the challenges and successes that were most commonly mentioned amongst all of the pharmacists. And although there were no major trends seen within the demographic groups, we were able to decipher smaller differences amongst these separate demographics. So this kind of showcased that there was a more significant increase in the mentioning of understaffing, contributing to workplace stress within public healthcare systems, whereas private systems had more issues with like a lack of recognition in their position. Additionally, it was found that the pharmacists with more experience had more mentions of challenges with funding of their products compared to those who had less experience in the field of ambulatory care. So there were slight differences, but not huge ones altogether. Right, so then
Lauren, could you just, for those who may not know what ambulatory care is, compared to, say, a pharmacist at CVS or Walgreens, could you just tell them?
Yeah, so ambulatory care pharmacy is, you know, a lot. I even thought this before, but when I think of pharmacy, I kind of think of that like retail pharmacy, you know, like your CVS, Walgreens. But ambulatory care is more focused on one-on-one interactions with patients. So the pharmacist will sit down with a patient directly and they'll have 20 to 30 to 40-minute conversations about their medications, medication plans, and it's just kind of more of a personal pharmacy interaction. There are different, like I said, the private and public healthcare systems. So they kind of can differ based on where they are, but it's, yeah, kind of.
Great.
I don't know if that's a great
Yeah,
definition.
no, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Okay. Alrighty. And then, yeah, so within the 21 pharmacists that we did interview, we kind of determined a top 3 challenges and successes that were most commonly mentioned. So as we kind of came together as a class, we defined and exemplified each of these with a direct quote from our interviewees. So these names are also coded. They are not the pharmacist's real names, so we could protect their privacy. But for challenges, the top 3 that we determined to be most common were workload, staffing, and time commitment. And the little number next to it, that's how many pharmacists out of the 21 had mentioned these issues. So for workload, should I read the quotes or?
No, I think people can read those on
Okay.
their own, but if you
Yeah,
have any
so-
other comments about, you know, where does this research go now?
Yeah, so basically, well, I might go with the successes first and then I'll talk about that. But the top 3 successes then were colleagues, interactions with their people in their environment of workplace, patient outcomes, and patient relationships. So a lot of these pharmacists were explaining that these were like the main reasons why they stay, basically, even though there are challenges, that these are they outweigh the factors of challenges. But basically what we can kind of do with this information, or what we were trying to kind of convey, was by identifying all of these top factors of challenges and success, we can present to them in more of a qualitative way how they can kind of fix these things, or if they are happy with where they're at, that's totally fine. But we kind of came up with a graph of the root of these challenges. So those were administrative decisions, which kind of branched out to workload and staffing, which then branched out to the division of work, time commitment, and scheduling. Sorry. But yeah, let me pull up one of my slides.
We're gonna have to end it pretty quickly.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
maybe you could just talk about the impact of this work when you presented back to the client.
Yeah, so the client, we got really good feedback. They were really happy to kind of hear about, I mean, being recognized, and that's great on its own, but they had really good feedback for us. They actually said that they did want to continue studying this, and we're going to go back and code more transcripts so that we can kind of come together and prolong it to get better results, more accurate results. And it was, well, oops. Yeah, that's kind of all I had, but I
Okay.
also wanted to thank the members of ACRN because their assistance throughout the project definitely helped us take the necessary steps and collect the meaningful data. Here I have something.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out this was an undergraduate class. So for them to pull this off was really quite amazing. Ellen, did you want to say anything about your experience?
Yes, I too am incredibly grateful for Acorns, and by which I mean really Elizabeth's support in doing this project. I don't think I would have been brave enough to undertake this by myself. Lauren and a couple of other students are actually continuing to work on it, as she said, over the summer. This was a bit of a hybrid project in that a couple of the pharmacists, so there were 3 pharmacists who came to us as the client. 2 of them have, oh no, I'm sorry, only one of them really has an academic position where she's expected to do a little bit of research. 2 others are basically full-time practitioners now. But there's enough interest in qualitative research to continue on, and now they are participating in the analysis process themselves, as opposed to just like hearing what the students had to say. So I am leading now a team coding exercise over the summer where the pharmacists are coming together with, again, Lauren and 2 other students who really excelled in this project for us to co-create and sort of co-explore the data and see what we can come up with using both their content expertise and then the methodological expertise that the students have developed through the class.
Great. Thank you both so much. Nice presentation.
All right. So, okay. Sorry. I knew I was going to tag in. Yeah, I'm excited to present our sort of next section on the agenda here, which is really covering some of the upcoming changes we're going to be making to the website. So none of these are currently live, so we'll probably post announcements when they do go through. But I want to introduce Elizabeth Wiegler. She did a lot of the UX research, digging into our job seeker tools, which you find under the student section currently, and Chloe Aiken, who's one of the students that participated in this work. So I'll pass it over to Elizabeth if you want to share.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm here to talk about a UX study that I volunteered to conduct. I talked to Elizabeth about volunteering, and she said, hey, we could improve our student page. And so we started with sort of this idea of what does it, we skipped a nap, I'm sorry. What does it mean to improve? So we started with past research. So ACRN had done a lot. Yeah, of really great, I'm so sorry, really great past research. Down. ACRN had done a lot of really great past research on to develop the tools that you see on the student page. So we felt like we were really hitting the mark there in terms of what we were offering. Some points were raised when we talked to stakeholders about, efficacy and things like that. But after looking at everything and talking to other stakeholders, we figure, there's been sort of this like explosion of resources available. They were following the same sort of categorization that we had done when it first opened. So we just started with that past research and then a cognitive walkthrough, which is just putting yourself in the shoes of the user and trying to see what they would see when they come to the website. And there is just all those extra resources. So we had 5 students and a recent graduate that participated in the open card sort. So what that was we'll talk about that on the next slide. But that's a way to understand how the user, the person who wants to seek information, would categorize things, not how we think they should, but how they actually want to use or have used it. And I think a lot of people think that the research for UX might end there, but a great thing about applying anthropology in that context is that no, you keep going. So we realigned with Elizabeth. We got concepts by Jennifer that came out of those findings that we worked together to create, and then we closed the loop. So I think that's something in anthropology, especially community-based participatory kind of research, you want to re-include those respondents in how you actually make that impact. So Chloe can speak more to that and what that experience was like later. But we're really excited that we had that opportunity. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
So a card sort itself, we used a really low fidelity tool. It's called FigJam. And we just put different examples of resources that the students would see. And then we had them categorize them. So I did not give a lot of context. I just let them look through it and talk about what they were thinking when they saw them. They would name the categories. And what we really found is we went from what had been a format-based categorization, right? So here's a blog post, here's a newsletter, to something that really followed a job search flow. So students reported that they were accessing materials at very specific times during their job search. They were conceptualizing each of these as fitting into a different stage of that for themselves. Next slide. So what we came up with were these 7 categories that contain all those different formats, but in a way that welcomes the student into the job seeker process and then tells them, where they can navigate to, depending on where they are at in that job search process. So I think this kind of harkens back to Susan's findings, but we're also talking about expanding that definition because job seekers, not just students, and are utilizing these tools and are going through this process themselves. There's a lot of back and forth between academia and industry, academia. We already had such a great conversation around what does that look like on the ground. But when you decide to make that shift, here are the categories that you can go to do that. And then with that, we'll just talk to Chloe. She's going to sort of close the loop yet again for us and tell us what it was like to participate and what that experience was like for her.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a good summary of what went down. As the participant in this study, I was there to provide insights on the organization, and I felt like it would have been, or it was helpful for me to do that as I graduated. So I have some tips of what I would have found to be helpful. The process was straightforward, but it did require a lot of time and careful thought. So Elizabeth didn't want to affect my decisions, like she said. So after explaining the process to me, she would, quietly observe as I worked out loud where I would place certain tools. And she would at times ask me questions along the way as to why I made certain decisions and what my thought process was. And how I interacted with the material was a raw example of how undergraduates might interact with the website. So after reading what each tool consisted of, I would separate them into distinct categories based on the theme of the material. And I created folders to separate and label them. And the folders make the material more digestible to the audience. And that will increase the likelihood that people will interact with each tool. And sometimes it was challenging to place certain materials since some tools could be applied to two separate folders, but with time it got clearer what would make more sense to me, depending on what phase I was in of what I was looking for. And I also noted to make sure that each tool lays out what it covers at the forefront. And again, that will increase the likelihood that someone will interact with it. And overall, I feel like the process was productive and beneficial for the layout of the website, so that users can be excited to interact with it and get more out of it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both. Do we have any burning questions for either Elizabeth or Chloe? And you're also welcome to put your questions in the chat. Okay, well, moving on here, I'll just tell you very briefly that we are going to be adding a new page to the instructor section. We've delayed on doing this, probably for no good reason other than time, but we have now participated in 9 different class projects. And they can be grouped into 3 categories, ones that are based on research, ones that involve case studies of successful problems, or I should say, problems that anthropologists addressed successfully. And then the third bucket would be blog posts and podcasts. So you can see under each of these 3 categories, we have a number of entries. They, I think, will all be useful to instructors as well as to students, because they will enable them to have an idea of what it is that practitioners, students, instructors are doing with respect to problem solving out in the real world. And in particular, the case studies, I think some of which are based on Terry Redding and Charlie Chaney's book, which you may be familiar with, called Profiles of Anthropological Praxis. This is an update in some ways of the book that Shirley Fisk and Bob Wolf did years ago. And this one has many, many case studies in it. So when a student goes for an interview or a job seeker goes for an interview and they don't have a particular problem that they have worked on, then they can refer to, well, here is what happened in this particular case. So I think, again, it's this page will be a good resource all around. And now we turn to some of the tools. The ones we're talking about today happen to be student tools. So Morgan and Ipshita, whoever of you is going to go first.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in first, talking about the older tool a little bit, and then Ipshita will introduce the newer one that was worked on. So the older one of the two that we started back in, or that we published back in 2023, is the Making Graduate School Decisions tool. And this is really just intended to help students walk through the process of making this decision of, do I want to go to graduate school? Do I not want to go? And then if I do go, what are some of the questions I need to be asking myself and asking other people on this process to make sure I make a good choice on deciding which program I want to get into, which school I want to get into, and even to an extent, I believe we also touched briefly on who would I want to work with under that umbrella. But then this one, of course, ties into the newer one that Ipshita will talk about a little bit. And then I believe we also had some thoughts on how to combine these and get your thoughts on how to combine these and present them to students who are in that phase of their life. But Ipshita, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. So this newer tool, the Navigating Graduate School tool. So for that one, we took a kind of a chronological approach and we divided it essentially into 3 components. The first year, the middle years, and the last mile. We did, however, keep in mind that students reading this tool could be going in for a master's program or a PhD, and we did try to kind of keep concerns common and shared concerns and questions that they might encounter. So overall, it's really meant to help and support students in keeping a bunch of things in mind at a time when, you know, they probably have a lot going on. And so we do have some fundamentals like program requirements and when you should seek funding, but also keeping in mind a realistic approach, like who you might choose as your advisor, what kind of relationships you should develop within and outside the department, and generally keeping kind of a approach that helps you remember that the department may have a culture of its own and expectations that may not exactly map onto your own. And there was also a section we included at the end, Life Beyond the University, that was more focused on an overall sense of work-life balance and overall well-being. But yeah, to echo what Morgan said, we are interested in marketing these tools together and are really curious about any suggestions you might have on that front.
Yeah, so again, if anyone has a thought on that, this is always the perennial problem that we don't have a ready list of emails for key contacts at universities, and we certainly don't have student emails. So how do you market effectively? That's typically the dilemma that we face. There is one option that I can think of, which is the Lambda Alpha Honor Society, because many of those students will end up in graduate school. So that is one group with whom we are working. But apart from that, if you have any thoughts for Ipshita and Morgan, let's hear them.
I'm going to raise my hand since I'm.
Yeah, go ahead, Kate. Mm-hmm.
So I think there's something to be said for trying to figure out where those people sit who have learned about what ethnography is, what anthropology is, by working with some of us who are practicing anthropologists who are in the field. You know, people want to get a master's degree to upskill, to potentially position themselves to making a better wage, a better salary, to get promotions within their company or organization. So I don't know that this sort of grad school decisions is perfect for that, but I think it's still appropriate for that. And I wonder if we have a sense of who those audiences might be and where we can, you know, drop this in and get it in front of folks. So just something to think about moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Answer, but
thanks. And I see Christine put EPIC in the chat. Thank you for that. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Is Priscilla on the line today? Okay, well, here, just to give you an update, we do have quite a few blog posts. The recent ones are listed in the left-hand column, and you can see it's a mix of interesting topics. The ones in the right-hand column are completely done and just waiting to be posted. We post them, you know, about every 2 weeks, so that we typically have 2 new blog posts coming out each month. And then beyond the blog posts that are listed here, we also have several others that are in an earlier phase that have not yet been finalized. But we encourage you to consider submitting a blog post to us. It is called the World of Work blog. So that means it has to be about careers or career preparation. But Chloe, who spoke earlier, just did one, which is the third one down on the left-hand column. How can I conquer feeling lost on the job hunt? We welcome blog posts from anyone. You don't have to have a big fancy degree behind your name. All you have to have is a good idea that pertains to careers and career readiness. And we will work with you, Priscilla especially will work with you and get it in shape. So please consider approaching us about that. And then we have last few final thoughts on some updates. One update that I'm really, really proud of is the fact that the AAA now is having us include some notes, very brief notes in their news and notes that is sent out by the executive director. And so these are the first two that came out, and I copied and pasted them just as they looked, or took a screenshot, I should say. So in the first one, May 1st, we have a new tool. How do you set up an internship program? And so that's what that one is. And then the second one just came out yesterday. There has been angst all over from departments about, we don't know how to keep in touch with our alums. And so we actually have a solution for that. We have a tool that will help you do it. You simply create a LinkedIn group and you put all your current students, current faculty, staff in that group and invite any of the alums that you know of to join the group. And then over time, that group just self-populates. So it's an easy way to do it. And then what can you do with it once you get it? Well, you can interact with people. You can have coffee chats, et cetera, et cetera. So at any rate, I'm really happy that we've had this opportunity to work with AAA, and the news and notes comes out twice a month. So people will be getting repeated exposure to ACRN, and I think that's a good thing. Second, Jennifer, would you want to talk about this?
Sure. So this is something that Ra, Elizabeth, and I have been cooking up. And it's really taking a lot of those job seeker tools and organizing them into a workbook that we'll have as print on demand. So we're kind of looking at options like Amazon to really make sure that it's an affordable resource. So our current timeline, we're going to try and start drafting stuff out this summer with the goal of trying to get something out in August. I don't know if we could promise, but that's the intention. So yeah, excited about it. And hopefully this will be something that will be something that you can assign in a course to work through over the course of your class that you're working on.
I have a quick question. Sorry.
Go ahead, Bob.
Is this discipline agnostic? I mean, this could be tools for seeking a job in physics or anthropology, or is it specific?
It's anthropology specific. So if you go to if you go to the student section and the job seeker tools, we're really going to be using a lot of those existing tools, and we'll be reaching out to the folks that helped contribute to those as well, because we want to make sure we give them credit in the workbook as we
That's great.
together.
That's really good.
Yeah, so the tools will all be in one spot, and in addition to that, there will be kind of thought questions to help you, the individual, work through some issues and think about, what your preferences are and so on.
Yeah. So you can, if you know Ryle, he's a huge fan of the, like, what is it? What color is your parachute?
Yeah.
So think about this for anthropologists as they're thinking through, like, what is my future career and options?
Rael is wise.
He is. And then here's a job advertisement for anyone who's a fluent French speaker and English speaker. LTG Associates is looking for someone to work on a short-term basis for a project they have. All you would need to do is send in your resume to Neil Tashima, and his email is there. People will know relatively soon if they got selected, because they intend to make their decisions by early August. So it would be important to get your resume in now if that is something of interest to you. So that's basically what we have for you today. Our next meeting will be in July 25th, same time, same place. Anybody have any, we still have about 4 minutes left. So any last minute thoughts? Daniel?
Hi, thanks. This is Daniel. I work at the AAA. A lot of you know me. I use they, them pronouns. I actually wanted to talk about something with not my AAA hat on right now. But I am also a member of a sibling association, the Linguistic Society of America. And I am on the program committee for the LSA annual meeting. And we are trying to add, we haven't really titled what it is yet, but like one of the working terms that's been tossed around is an industry track at the upcoming LSA annual meeting, which is going to be in January in Baltimore. And it's very much a work in progress, but I would, the LSA industry folks tend to be very heavily in the tech sector. If you are doing linguistic anthropology in some kind of an applied setting and are interested in connecting with other people who also are and with academic linguists, let me know and I will loop you into that conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Christine?
Hi, I just have a question. It's occurring to me that my department, as you know, went through a real struggle last year. Our program was almost shut down because we have so few majors. And it seems like the ACRN would be like, I want to figure out a way to flag to potential students and their parents and the public that, for instance, our department is sort of connected to the network, and that therefore we're putting a lot of priority on career readiness, and we have tools available for students and so forth. And so it just makes me wonder whether there's some way by which there could be departments, like a process for departments or programs to affiliate with ACRN, so that that's something we could put on our website, just to sort of highlight it in a way, and also for our administrators to feel like we're doing what we need to be doing to stay alive. So that's just a
that
thought.
sounds interesting. We can talk about that and see if that's something that would be good to consider. And then I think you already know we have the departmental advisory initiative where we would actually come on site and work with you for a few days and then follow up over the course of a year. So that's also an option. But let me get back to you on that. Yes, Kathleen.
Kate, yeah.
Kate,
So
sorry.
Christine, that's okay. Everyone does this.
Okay.
More virtual meetings, more name of Kathleen. Christine, in sort of the opposite but also similar thing, at my nice tiny little universities of Wisconsin system, we've had massive struggles this year. I've spent a good part of my last year not responding to emails from people I like and reworking curricula to ensure that students can still graduate in a timely manner despite a lot of faculty layoffs. But I also just got an anthropology major approved. And a big part of that was, yay, ACRN, your language of jobs, of the practical things, really allowed me to make a very strong case for why this matters. And you would not believe how many people have contacted me with interest on this. So I think we should have our own little working group on strategizing. I mean, I think it would be really fun to support each other on this. We're not just apes and ancient civs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll reach out to you. That would be great.
Yeah, I put my email in the chat.
Wonderful. That sounds great. And Ellen Rubenstein looks like she wants to be counted in too. Well, thank you all so much for coming today. It's great chatting with you. We'll post these slides within the week, as well as the recording. And you can look for the newsletter coming up in June, and then our next meeting as posted here, July 25th. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.